We are going to talk about distressed properties. So homes with equity, homes without equity, and then pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, and post-foreclosure. So this is a really good chapter to know about for especially when you're going to be practicing, and then if you're going to do investing as well. So let's dive in. So we have a graph here that goes over the market that we've had. So for instance, the price per square foot started out here, for instance, in 1990. And then we had a downward trending buyer's market. Then we went up with an upward trending seller's market. Then we went down with a downward trending buyer's market. And then an upward trending seller's market. And then, you know, we're still kind of going up, even though there might be a dip. So as the real estate market moves through a downward trending buyer's market, so right here, more and more single family homes tend to become underwater. So homes without equity, for instance. The loan amount is greater than the value of the property, and many homeowners decide to stop making scheduled loan payments. Homeowners may try to either refinance their loans with another loan that has more favorable terms, or if they do not have enough equity to qualify for a loan refinance due to their loan to value ratio being too high, they may be forced to look at other options, and we'll discuss those. They may include homeowner options with equity and homeowner options without equity. So remember, if you see the DTBM, we're referring to downward trending buyer's market, UTSM, upward trending seller's markets. Okay, so homeowner options with equity. So this is when you've actually, so for instance, the house is $100,000 and there's an $80,000 loan on it. Well, you have $20,000 in equity. However, if the value of the home went down to like $50,000 instead, but the loan is $80,000, well, then there's no equity in the home. So what we're discussing is there is equity in the home. So the homeowner makes, so an option is to do nothing. So a lot of people do nothing when they have equity because they just make the loan payments no matter how difficult. So even if the value of the home's going low, if they have equity in the home, or if they're able to, they'll just make the payments and stick it out until the market comes around, because everything's cyclical and equity will return to the home. The market always goes up, down, like we had seen in the previous one. So if people are here, for instance, they might wait, go through it and then wait until the market goes back up. So do nothing is an option, because the homeowner still needs a home to live in. So as long as the payments continue to be affordable so they can afford it, I always tell people, if you can weather the storm, no matter if the market's up or down, that's what matters, because who cares if it declines in value? You still need a place to live. Everything will be cyclical and come back. So if you can weather out the storm. Another option, though, is to refinance the loan. So replacing the original loan with a new loan that has more favorable terms. So for instance, replacing a loan that you had with one that is maybe a reduced interest rate, maybe a cash out refinance to take out the equity in the home so you're able to have cash in hand. So it's basically replacing the old loan with a new one that is better terms, more favorable terms. This is difficult, though, if the property does not have equity, which is common during a downward trending buyer's market. But if there is equity, you could refinance the loan. Another thing is to sell the home with equity. So if there's equity in the home, you're able to just do a normal sale. So able to sell it, the lender will get their money back. So you don't have to ask the lender to take a loss, for instance. So it's just a normal sale, and it's no damage to the homeowner's credit rating. So these are the three options when there's equity in the home. Okay, so what happens when you do not have equity in the home? Well, you could do a loan mod. You could sell the home without equity and try to do a short sale. You could see if the lender will accept a deed in lieu of foreclosure. You can see if this lender will accept that deed in lieu of foreclosure, but with a rent back provision and equity participation agreement. Then you could also try and file for bankruptcy, or even attempt to sue the lender. So we'll go through all of these. Loan modification. So this is different than a loan refinance, because refinance is you're actually replacing an old loan with a new one. This one is where you're doing the old loan, but you're trying to modify it. So the homeowner can attempt to obtain a loan modification from the existing lender including terms that are acceptable to both parties. So you're not replacing the loan, you're trying to modify it to where it's favorable to the homeowner, but as well as the lender. The loan modification must be a win-win situation for both parties. Otherwise, the lender will most likely have to foreclose on the property in the future. So if it's not a win for the lender or it's not a win for the home buyer, then they may have to do foreclose. And the foreclosure process isn't too difficult in California because it's non-judicial due to our primary security device being a promissory note for deed of trust, anyways. So it's not too bad, but loan modifications are sometimes hard to do. But if you do get them approved, it can reduce the interest rate, maybe even the principal balance of the loan, or both. So this is an option. So what happens if you want to sell the home, but there's no equity? So you actually have a larger loan than you do the value of the home. So if the loan amount is greater than the value of the home, then the seller's lender may voluntarily, this is important, forgive part of the debt. This is called a short sale and generally requires several months to complete. So it's not short in time, but what they're doing is they're shortening the amount that the lender is owed. The lender is agreeing to take a loss, and they're doing this loss up front rather than foreclosing and maybe a time going by and they're still not getting as much money for the home. So short sales are popular during a downward trending buyer's market. And it does take a long time to complete. So that's why selling short sales or also buying a short sale can take quite a bit, and we'll discuss it a little bit further too. A homeowner's credit rating will usually be detrimentally affected by either a trustee's sale, so the actual foreclosure, but even if you don't get to the foreclosure and you do a short sale, that still could affect the credit rating detrimentally. Okay, you do need to know about a deed in lieu of foreclosure because this is something that's a little weird and has some specifics to it that the state exam likes to ask you. So what could be done is if there's no equity in the home, so the loan amount is larger than the value, the lender could accept a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So instead of actually going through the foreclosure process and doing the trustee's sale, for instance, the lender would voluntarily accept a deed. So the borrower would deed the property over to the lender. But this usually happens when there's only one loan on the property. Why is that the case? Because if there are any junior loans, so if there are other loans on the property besides just this primary one, well, the primary lender who's going to be accepting a deed in lieu of foreclosure will then usually be responsible for those junior loans. So then it's not necessarily in the best interest for the primary lender to accept a deed in lieu of foreclosure when there are junior loans and other loans on the property, because they will take responsibility for those junior loans. So you really need to know that. Now, this is something that I've never experienced, and I've talked with a lot of people in the industry and they've never experienced this, but it is an option and it can happen. So lender will accept a deed in lieu of foreclosure, so what we had just talked about previously, but they'll have a rent back provision and equity participation agreement with the borrower. So the lenders may allow the homeowner to deed the property over to them, so using the deed in lieu of foreclosure, but then the lender will rent the property back to that homeowner at below market rates. And then at a designated time in the future, the property will be sold or refinanced, and the lender will receive their money back and split the profits with the former owner, who's the tenant at this point, and the lender. So they'll be able to try to get their money back, but also get rental income for it. So this is a way that you could do it. It's not very common. I haven't come across it, but this is an option. So just be aware of that. And so now we have bankruptcy. This is a good one to know about. You have Chapter 7 liquidation and Chapter 13 restructuring. And so these are bankruptcy filings that could temporarily stop the foreclosure of a home. So if a borrower or homeowner is having hardship, for instance, and needs and is going to be needing to declare bankruptcy, what happens is that the borrower will basically get more time in the property by filing for bankruptcy, because they are saying that bankruptcy court is going to take over and they will include this in their filings. So the homeowner will be able to stay in the property while the bankruptcy court figures out what to do. Usually though, when there's no equity in the home, bankruptcy court will not liquidate it, and it'll just go back to the normal situation of where the lender can then foreclose. But the lender is put in basically a standstill on pause where they can't do anything until the bankruptcy court figures out what to do with it. So it just gives the buyer, the home buyer or homeowner, more time, and it puts the lender where they're not receiving any income from the property. They're not income, but getting their money back basically from the loan payments. So this just puts a pause from the time that they file for bankruptcy and the time that the bankruptcy court figures out what to do. If there's no equity in the home, they will usually not liquidate or dispose of the property. So then it just goes back to the same position or status prior to filing for bankruptcy protection. So then the lender will then come in at that point and foreclose the property through normal proceedings. So just gives the homeowner additional time. The lender, though, could ask the federal bankruptcy court for a request for relief from stay. So instead of the home owner basically having all of this time while the bankruptcy court figures out what to do, the lender can then get this request in and the federal bankruptcy court can approve it to allow the lender to go in and foreclose the home without having to wait for the bankruptcy protection period to end. So that is something that could be done. Another option is to sue the lender. So many attorneys have litigated lenders for predatory lending, truth in lending violations, and mistakes in the mechanics of the foreclosure process. So there were a lot of predatory lending and just really bad lending, especially in the 2000s, and that's what also did not help our financial crisis that we had, was due to this really bad lending that was going on. So they were trying to sue these lenders. These lawsuits are generally filed when the lender is not willing to modify the loan, yet may be liable for compensatory and possibly punitive damages. So remember, compensatory is giving the person who is harmed money back to where they would have been. Punitive damages is to hurt the person who did the violation because of their actions while originated and or foreclosing on the loan. Unfortunately, many of these cases resulted in rulings in favor of the lenders, not the borrowers. So this isn't a common thing, but it was something that was happening, especially when the market took a tumble. Attorneys were filing or litigating lenders for ill practice. Okay, so let's talk about pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, and post-foreclosure. This is really, really good to know. So pre-foreclosure is short sales. We're going to get into the mechanics of that. Foreclosure, so using a trustee sale, non-judicial foreclosure, and we'll touch on judicial foreclosure as well. And post-foreclosure, so once the foreclosure happens, you'll actually have bank-owned properties, which is real estate-owned properties, REOs. So pre-foreclosure short sale. When the loan balance is greater than the value of the home, the borrower may ask the lender to voluntarily take a loss. This is called a pre-foreclosure or short sale, trying to avoid the actual foreclosure process, and the lender will take a short amount of what was actually owed to them. The owner usually finds a buyer who's willing to buy the property at or within 10% of the property's market value. So the market value, though, at this point is less than what the loan amount is. So then the borrower will then ask the existing lender to voluntarily take the loss now rather than in the future by doing the foreclosure and then having to sell it at that point. If the lenders wait until the trustee's sale, especially during a downward trending buyer's market, the loss may be significantly more than if they had sold it as a short sale. So in other words, take the loss now rather than later and save some money in the process. They're going to take a loss, but how big of a loss are they going to take? So with short sales, the lender may not, so the problem is with short sales is the lender has not made a decision at what price they will allow it to go through. So, even if you have somebody that's wanting to buy your property and it's at relatively a good market value, the lender might say, hey, a few months go by that it's worth more than that, we're not going to accept it, and it'll fall out of contract because the buyer does not want to pay that price that is then approved for the short sale. So deliverability of short sales comes into question at this point. That's why they take a long time to complete. It can take several months. So you have to be patient, and it can be quite tedious dealing with uncooperative lenders and an anxious seller and anxious buyers too. So short sales are, you can make money doing them, and they are a great option. The problem is they can take a long time to do because the lender has not made a decision on what they would sell it for. So that can take quite a bit of time. So general timeline for the short sale process. So 7 to 10 days after sending the short sale package to the lender will acknowledge receipt of the package. 30 to 45 days after submitting the short sale package, the lender will perform a broker price opinion. So a BPO, comparable to an appraisal, but a licensed agent is doing this analysis on the valuation. 2 to 3 weeks after the BPO is completed, the lender will review and approve or disapprove the terms of the short sale. If the loan was previously sold to an investor, the investor must approve the terms of the short sale. The investor is usually motivated to recoup as much money as possible. So this is just saying, like on the secondary market, for instance, if it was sold. So people are wanting to get their money. They're going to take a loss, but how big of a loss are they going to take? And then if the BPO is comparable to what the purchase price is for what the buyer is willing to pay, then it can proceed. So approval of the short sale may be name specific to one buyer, or general approval that can be used by anyone. A lot of the time it's sometimes for anyone. They say, hey, as long as it's this amount, these terms, it's okay. But sometimes it could be for just this specific buyer. As lenders move through a downward trending buyer's market, they generally become more efficient in handling short sales, and more of their approvals tend to become non-name specific and can be sold to anyone. Real estate investor may be able to obtain a good deal if they can close fairly quickly on an approved short sale. So that's meaning that, for instance, there might have been a buyer already, the short sale package was submitted, and they had figured out a price point that they would be willing to accept. The lender did, but the buyer was not willing to pay for it, or they couldn't close on that price. So it falls out of contract, but it's still an approved short sale for that amount. So a new buyer could swoop in and close on that approved short sale amount. So it can take quite a bit though. This is just general timeline. It can take a lot longer. It could take, 2 months for this to happen. And then it could take another 2 months for what the lender's answer is once they get the BPO. So a lot of things that go into it. And then you still have to close on the transaction after the lender approves it. You have to go about, having escrow, put everything together, possession of the property get transferred. So, it can take a while. Some advantages to the homeowner regarding a short sale. So seller is in control during the short sale process. They usually have possession of the home because they're trying to do it like a normal sale, but it is contingent on the lender, the original lender, approving the purchase price because they are taking a loss on the home. There may not be a foreclosure on the seller's credit report when a short sale is loosed. Foreclosures must be disclosed on future employment and loan applications. Short sales may be able to escape this requirement, so it sometimes looks better. The seller may not be required to be late on loan payments. However, many lenders require the seller to be delinquent or at least have a hardship prior to allowing a short sale. So they just don't let anyone do a short sale. They do have to, that's also what goes in through the approval process. So hardship could be loss of job, a death, divorce, something like that that's detrimentally affecting the person's ability to afford the home payments. Okay, short sale mistakes. So what happened is the home is priced incorrectly. Is it priced too low as a short sale? So that way then the lender's not going to approve that low of a price. And so then it bounces out. You have to get a new buyer for that new approved amount. And so that can take a lot of time. Showing restrictions. Sometimes the seller doesn't want people to come into their property. They don't really know they maybe don't really have the motivation to sell. They don't really care, but this is an option. They might not have photos of the property up. The property might not be in the best condition. The seller does not provide the listing agent or the short sale negotiator with financial information nor a hardship letter. So they don't help with the short sale package, for instance. So reasons a lender rejects a short sale. So the price is too low. Remember, the banks aren't dumb, you know, they want to try and get recoup as much money as they possibly can. If their market value is more than what somebody's willing to pay, they'll find somebody else, a different buyer, to pay what they deserve, they believe, in that current market. Short sale package is incomplete, so documents missing, for instance. Seller does not qualify for a short sale, so the seller just can't make it happen. They don't have the hardship, for instance, or it's just they can't show proof that a short sale is needed. And then buyer does not qualify for the new loan. So the buyer, for instance, can't make it happen, can't close. Foreclosures. We're moving on to foreclosure. Trustee's sale. So the following is a general foreclosure timeline for deeds of trust in California. So this is with a non-judicial foreclosure. So the trustor, the borrower, stops making the loan payments. The beneficiary, who is the lender, uses the acceleration clause in the deed of trust to call the entire loan balance immediately due and payable. So remember that acceleration clause in there? It says, hey, upon a certain event, it can become due and payable. So for instance, if you were to sell the home, like a due on sale, or if you were to stop making loan payments, then the acceleration clause comes in to effect. So then if the loan is not paid current, then the trustee, who's the third party who sits between the trustor and beneficiary, remember they have bare, naked legal title, allowing a non-judicial foreclosure, which is not through the courts. So the trustee is instructed to record a notice of default because it's like the middleman. And this lets everyone know the property is on the way to foreclosure. So when there's a notice of default on the property and you take a listing, for instance, that has a notice of default, that is something that is material and needs to be disclosed. So on the MLS, actually, when you input it, there is a section in there that says, is there a notice of default on it? And that's what they're talking about. They might be trying to, for instance, sell it as a normal sale if there's a little bit of equity in the home before having to do either a short sale or a foreclosure. The beneficiary and trustee must wait 3 months, all the while hoping the borrower will pay the loan current. So they have to wait at least 3 months. And if the loan default is not paid current, then the trustee records a notice of trustee's sale in a newspaper of general circulation once each week for 3 weeks. So remember, 3 months plus 21 days at this point. But prior to the 5 days to the 3 month, 21 day period, the trust, before the trustee sale happens, the trustor, who's the borrower, may be able to reinstate the loan by paying all the arrearages and costs incurred by the lender. So they can put the loan back to current state. They have 5 days prior to, so basically they have the 3 months and 16 days to do so, because the 3 months and 21 days is then when the trustee sale can happen. So the trustee sells the property on the court steps through a trustee sale. Again, this is a non-judicial foreclosure, so it's not through the courts. So the trustee is then selling it to someone, and it usually goes to the original lender, but we'll talk about this. So some foreclosure laws. After all publication requirements have been met, the property can be sold to the highest bidder for cash totaling the full amount of the debt. So it has to be the full amount of the debt. So usually it's more than what the market value. So the market value is usually less than what this amount is because it's the full amount of the debt, plus foreclosure fees and other expenses associated with the sale. So it could be relatively high because that's why they might be foreclosing on it, is because the property isn't worth what it would at this point, what it was when the buyer had originally purchased the property. So the winning bidder receives a trustee's deed upon sale, which is a form of grant deed that is recorded in the county where the property is located. So whoever wins the bid will have the trustee's deed upon sale, which is like a grant, which is just a form of a grant deed, and it's recorded. The seller/lender has the right to require every bidder to show evidence of their ability to pay the full purchase price. So usually they have to show they have the cash, cashier's check, or bank checks they'll have to have with them. And each bid to purchase a foreclosed property at the trustee sale is an irrevocable offer to purchase the property. So you have to get approved to be able to be there to do the bid, But then if you do submit a bid, it's irrevocable. And if there are no bidders at the trustee's sale, then the property automatically reverts back to the beneficiary, the lender, for the debts. So a lot of the time it will go back to the lender. Let's talk though about judicial versus non-judicial. So in California, because we use a deed of trust through the, we foreclose through non-judicial foreclosure by using a trustee's sale. However, they have the ability to foreclose through the courts and do a judicial foreclosure if they so choose. And by doing that, by doing the judicial foreclosure, they could go after a deficiency judgment, the difference between the loan amount and the value of the property, from the borrower, so make them personally liable. It doesn't happen often, but it is an option in California that you do not have to foreclose non-judicially. You could go through the courts and try to obtain a deficiency judgment for that differing amount between the loan and the value of the property. There are several anti-deficiency laws, though, in California that are intended to protect purchase money owner-occupied homeowners. So purchase money is where you are doing it to purchase a house and you actually are living in the home. Thus, homeowners generally have a greater protection against deficiency judgments than do real estate investors. Hence, we usually do non-judicial foreclosures because it's easier, faster, cheaper. But if they so choose, they could, the lenders do have the option to foreclose through the courts with a judicial foreclosure. So HELOCs, these are home equity lines of credits. So this is what you need to know about. For instance, if you have a home and there's a lot of equity in it, you can try to get an equity line of credit towards the property. And that's a general lien in a way. It's pulled from the certain property, but it goes against all of their assets. So a deed of trust is a lien against a specific property. Conversely, a HELOC, equity line, is usually personally guaranteed by the borrower. So personally guaranteed to all of that borrower's assets. For this reason, HELOCs have been difficult to eliminate through foreclosure. Lenders knew this when they made the HELOC loans. So when the real estate market inevitably tanked, they knew they would have a better chance of collecting their money in the future if the borrower was personally liable for the loan and not just a specific property. So it's basically meaning, yes, with the deed of trust, for instance, we collateralize the property based on the property. But if the property goes down in value, the lender's dead in the water. They're out of luck, basically. However, with an equity line of credit, the borrower is personally liable, so the lender is able to go after all of the person's assets to try to get their money back from lending that equity line. Then we have disclosure exemptions. So an REO lender is generally exempt from many of the disclosures that are required by a seller in a normal real estate transaction. So remember, REO, bank-owned property, the foreclosure has happened and the lender now has this property back in their portfolio and they're trying to sell it. Well, when they do sell it, they're exempt from a lot of the disclosures that a normal seller would be required to disclose. However, remember, according to common law in California, a lender still has the duty, though, to disclose material facts if they are known. So even if they're exempt from like the transfer disclosure statement, where what you usually use to disclose material facts, the lender still has the duty to disclose the material facts in some form. A lot of the time, though, the lenders don't have much knowledge about the property, so they don't really know of any material facts. That's why they don't usually disclose anything in that regard. So some of the disclosures an REO lender is exempt include the TDS, here it is, natural hazard disclosure, Melrose, supplemental property tax notice, notice of private transfer fee, and homeowner's guide to earthquake safety. So these are some that they are exempt from, but not exempt, and they must provide include the smoke detector disclosure, water heater disclosure, lead-based paint disclosure, Megan's Law, FERPTA, and then California's 3 1/3 withholding requirement for foreign sellers. So these kind of safety, these you're not exempt from these ones, but they are exempt from the ones up here. So buying at a trustee's sale. Reasons for a real estate investor to buy at a trustee's sale. So you can get a really good deal sometimes. You can buy the properties before they hit the market. So it can be a good deal. You're kind of first dibs at them. And the dealers can buy in bulk at less than wholesale prices and then resell to wholesale buyers for all cash and fast closes. or buy it less than wholesale and sell at retail prices through real estate agents. So they have two options to do that. And you can also flip properties for a nice profit. However, reasons for real estate investors not to buy at a trustee's sale. There's quite a bit of reasons why not to, but that's why you can get a good deal. It's because you're taking a risk. There's a chance that it's not going to go well. So it can be difficult to get inside the properties to inspect their condition prior to the trustee's sale. You're basically purchasing something, doing a big investment, and really not having an idea of what the property actually looks like. It's a big box of mystery. So that is a risk. Also, a computer search may not provide all the necessary data needed to make an informed decision regarding an appropriate purchase price. So you might not be able to truly know the condition of the property, so you might not know if you're overpaying for something. You really don't have a ton of data to base your purchase price off of. A new investor may not be able to obtain a professional title search prior to buying a property at a trustee's sale. So they might not be able to obtain a professional title search. So due to that, the buyer may not be able to obtain title insurance. So it might not be a very easy deliverable property if you were to sell it down the road. Lenders that are selling properties through a trustee sale are exempt from many disclosures that are required. So you don't have much information about the property. And much to the delight of sophisticated buyers, an inexperienced investor may be suckered into paying too much money for an over-encumbered property. So they might not have might not be too savvy and know all the tricks of the trade of how to buy at a trustee's sale and hedge your bets. So there are a lot of risks to it, but you can get a good deal. Foreclosure. So trustee's sale with a property sold to a real estate investor. So at the trustee's sale, it actually gets sold to an investor and does not revert back to the lender. So non-judicial foreclosure through a trustee's sale is generally used in California and other states that use deeds of trust as the primary security device for real estate loans. A deed of trust, however, can be foreclosed judicially through the courts or non-judicially through a trustee's sale. So when it happens through a trustee's sale, an investor can purchase it, but there are two main problems for buying directly from a trustee at a trustee's sale. So investigation of the existing encumbrances on the property and obtaining a policy of title insurance. So from the previous slide, reasons not to buy it. These are the two big ones. Title insurance, hard to get sometimes, and you don't really know the condition of the property, the encumbrances it may have. So there is a risk to it, but you can get a good deal, and sometimes they're good for flips. However, if no one bids on the property at the trustee's sale, it'll be sold or reverted back to the lender. So when a property is sold at a trustee's sale and no investors bid more than the lender's initial bid, which may be the loan amount plus costs and fees, then the lender will win the bid and acquire the property as collateral for the real estate loan that was initially made to the borrower who originally purchased the property. Lender acquired properties are usually moved into the REO portfolio of properties, real estate owned properties. So at this point, the lender gets it, and now they're going to have to dispose of these properties to try and get their money back. So sell them. So now that it's in the portfolio, it becomes a post-foreclosure real estate owned REO properties. So lenders do not want to flood the surrounding real estate sales market with REO properties and cause market values to decline in the process. Because remember, if they increase the supply and there's no demand, or demand stays the same or decreases, then the value is going to go down even more than what it is for why they had the foreclosures and received the property to begin with. So for this reason, lenders may trickle REO properties onto the real estate market in an attempt to keep supply at a constant level, thus keeping property prices up by matching the demand for single-family purchases with the supply coming on the market. So that way they're able to trickle it and keep the supply constant with the demand, or keep it even or level. That way they can try to keep the market prices up. Lenders generally make their money making real estate loans, not as real estate investors holding those properties that were foreclosed in their portfolio. So remember, they want to try to get their as much money as possible and then lend that money out, and because that's where they make their money. They don't make their money by having to foreclose, lose money, and then try to sell them. So that's where they don't make their money. So a little bit of mechanics regarding REOs. So the lender's asset manager may list a property for sale with a real estate broker. So once you get your real estate license, you could be working for a agent, a brokerage, for instance, that deals largely with foreclosures. During the type of market that's an upward trending seller's market, these don't really happen. But when the market's going down, There's not many people purchasing properties. There's not many buyers in the marketplace. So, and not a lot of sellers are wanting to sell at a reduced rate. So you could be working for an asset manager to help with the disposition of their REO portfolio. So single family investors may tend to favor REO properties because the lender has already made the decision to take a loss on the real estate loan when it is listed for sale with a local real estate broker. So they've already decided to take that loss. Whereas with a short sale, they haven't decided to take that loss. And they also haven't decided how much of a loss they're willing to take. But with REOs, they've already decided to take that loss and for the amount. REO properties are generally more deliverable than short sale properties because short sale lenders have generally not made the decision to take a loss on the property. So REOs are more deliverable than short sales. So a lot of the time with REOs, these sellers, lenders usually will not pay for pest inspections or any corrective work unless they receive a substantially higher sale price to counteract the added cost of providing the pest inspection and work. So if you're going to be buying an REO, if you're going to have a buyer purchasing it, a lot of the times you got to know what you're getting yourself into. The REO, the lender is not wanting to put any more effort or costs or money into that home because they've already lost money. They just kind of want to sell it. So a lot of the time it's investors and they just buy it for what it is. An REO seller / lender will usually try to end a bad loan situation with as little damage as possible. The lender usually only cares about the net proceeds coming from the sale of the assets. Factors to consider when purchasing an REO property. So deliverability. So they're usually pretty deliverable, but you do need to make sure about it. Good title, because remember, you're able to, they've closed it, so they own it, so you're able to get title insurance that way. Property condition and potential renovation costs. So they're usually really beat up, the REOs, because people lived in the property they knew it was going to foreclosure and they're already going to get dinged on their credit. So they don't really care about treating the property well. So it could be expensive to get the property condition back up to a livable condition. You can get a faster close of escrow though, because the lender's already decided to take a loss and for what amount. So that's good. So that's why deliverability, it's usually pretty deliverable, but is it always deliverable? Not always. REOs may have a higher purchase price than short sales because they've already foreclosed on it. They know they're going to take a loss on it, but they're set on what kind of loss. Whereas with a short sale, they may take a little bit more of a loss because they know there's a set buyer already willing to pay that and they can show it. Whereas with REOs, they're putting it on the open market, hoping to get a buyer. So they might be wanting more money for it and seeing what happens. Less REOs are available on the market, so there's not a ton of REOs sometimes. So that also could be then that the prices are up. Real estate investors may buy REOs directly from the lender. So maybe not even use agents. So they could just go directly to the lender and see their portfolio and just buy it. Kind of have to have some inside knowledge for that, but that is an option. And that's it. So this is a really good one to study. If you have questions, please let me know.